Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Donald Trump is leading the US presidential race and the world is watching closely because the result will impact everyone. Trump's statements are shaking stock markets. Today, Taiwan is on the edge after Trump said that they'll have to pay for US support. We will discuss the implications. Meanwhile, in the Democratic camp, Joe Biden has endorsed Kamala Harris. What does that mean? Is there an Iranian hand in the Trump assassination bid? The US Secret Service has made a revelation. In the UK, two women of Indian origin are in the battle to replace Rishi Sunak as the Tory leader. In France, a terror threat looms as they gear up to host the Olympics in a few days from now, while the European Union is divided over slapping higher taxes on imported Chinese cars. How the Indian job market is looking bleak despite consistent growth, and what can the government do to fix it? Egypt claims to be Africa's top investment destination, but that's only half the story. We'll tell you the other half. Are you using emojis right? We'll tell you about the generation and gender gap here. And students in Japan land up in hospital after having spicy chips. How hot is too hot and why do we like it? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Violent protests continue in Bangladesh. At least 6 students killed and hundreds injured. The students are protesting against quotas in government jobs. The Sheikh Hasina government has ordered schools and colleges to be shut indefinitely. India backs Mauritius in its dispute with the UK over the Chagos Islands. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar assures Mauritius of India's support. He is on a 2-day visit to strengthen bilateral ties there. Britain and America run a military base in the Indian Ocean territory that belongs to Mauritius. 6 foreign nationals found dead in a luxury hotel in Bangkok. All are presumed to have died after ingesting cyanide from teacups. Thailand's Prime Minister says the deaths are unrelated to national security, allaying fears of it affecting the country's lucrative tourism sector. France launches a probe into NVIDIA. The AI chip maker is facing heat over alleged anti-competitive practices. The French competition watchdog searched NVIDIA's Paris office. The US tech firm recently joined Apple and Microsoft in having a stock market valuation of more than $3 trillion. Bad day for big tech. A European Union court rejects TikTok's challenge against the new digital rules. This is the first time that a tech giant has opposed the landmark law. The law aims to curb the powers of big tech like Amazon, Apple and TikTok owner ByteDance. And FIFA says it will probe racist chants by Argentinian players. The incident took place after they won the Copa America. The song targets France's star striker Kylian Mbappe. It dates back to the 2022 World Cup final in which Argentina beat France. Trump 2.0 is the talk of the town. If he wins, will he be as unpredictable as before? Or will he go mainstream? A lot of countries and governments will be watching this closely, but none more than Taiwan. The US is Taiwan's biggest defense partner, sort of like their shield against China. Joe Biden has repeatedly promised to defend Taiwan if attacked. But will Donald Trump do the same? He was asked this question in a recent interview. Listen to the answer. Taiwan did take about 100% of our chip business. I think Taiwan should pay us for defense. We are no different than an insurance company. Taiwan doesn't give us anything. Now, this is huge. A US law requires Washington to defend Taiwan, but it does not say how. Defend how? It can be political support or military support or direct intervention. The Americans call it strategic ambiguity. But when it comes to Donald Trump, there is no ambiguity. He is clear about what he wants. Taiwan must pay for American support. That's what Trump wants. He's putting a price on it. The question is, what will that change? Taiwan already pays for US weapons and equipment. But recently, Joe Biden has started a new trend, that of military aid. While you must pay for military sales, you don't have to pay for aid. It's funded by American taxpayers. Now, you may remember Biden's mega $95 billion package. Around $2 billion of it was meant for Taiwan. But under Trump, that may not happen. He wants to charge for military support and assistance. We have seen US warships sail through the Taiwan Strait. Perhaps that will come at a cost now. Or joint military drills may get billed, or training programs may get invoiced. It's a worrying scenario for Taiwan. Their premier has reacted to Donald Trump's comments. He says the US-Taiwan relationship remains rock solid.
I also noticed former US President Donald Trump's comments, but I'm sure that everyone knows that the Taiwan-US relations are rock solid from the past years. The peace and stability over the Taiwan Strait and the Indo-Pacific region are a common responsibility and goal.
It's not an easy sell. US support is the only thing keeping China at bay here. If Washington is shaky, Beijing could attack. And those fears are shaking up Taiwan's stock market. Their top chip company, TSMC, fell by 2.6% today. It lost $30 billion from its market value. And what about China? How are they reacting to it? Well, US assistance to Taiwan is a sensitive issue for Beijing. Today, they announced a major decision. China has suspended nuclear arms talks with Washington. Why? Because the US sold weapons to Taiwan.
For a period of time, the United States has ignored China's resolute opposition and repeated representations, continued its arms sales to Taiwan. For this reason, China has decided to suspend talks with the US on a new round of arms control and non-proliferation consultations.
On paper, Beijing should welcome Trump's statement. He has a clear lead in the presidential race. He's in pole position to occupy the White House. So his comments carry weight. Having said that, this is not just any presidential candidate. This is Donald Trump. He speaks more rhetoric than English. So how seriously should we take his words? Let's look at the first Trump presidency. It recorded a sharp increase in arms sales to Taiwan, put together almost $18 billion of it. We're talking jets, guns, and missiles. Trump also signed a law that eased travel rules with Taiwan. As a result, more US officials could visit the island. Plus, don't forget China. Donald Trump waged a major trade war with Beijing. And guess who benefited from that? Taiwan. Also, this payment business is easier said than done. In 2019, Trump tried it with Japan. The US has around 54,000 soldiers in the country. Tokyo does pay Washington for their upkeep, but Trump wanted to quadruple it to $8 billion. And in case you're wondering, it did not work out. Same with NATO. Trump asked all alliance members to spend 2% of their GDP on defense. A lot of members still don't do that. So my point is quite simple. Trump relishes these alarmist statements. They make him seem tough and businesslike. But whether he actually follows through is a completely different question. Nonetheless, his comments will trigger two changes. One, it will spook allies. After Afghanistan, the US stock is already down, and such comments will make it worse. Consider Europe, for example. They have relied on US military protection since the Second World War, but now they must protect themselves. They cannot rely on Washington alone. And change number two, every country must prepare for a transactional relationship, and that includes India, because Donald Trump understands only give and take. He may sweet-talk governments, he may boast about friendships, but he will drive a hard bargain. So to answer my first question, yes, Trump 2.0 will be unpredictable. The years out of office haven't softened this man. If anything, he's more chaotic.
Take a look at what happened.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence.
Please welcome the next President of the United States, President Donald J. Trump.
Trump can be synonymous with chaos. As of today, you could say the same about American politics. It's in serious turmoil, in large part because of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. It has sparked a security nightmare, and the fallout is scary. In the last 24 hours, A series of events have unfolded at the Republican National Convention. One man was shot dead just 2 blocks away from the convention venue. 2 knives were recovered from him. In a separate incident, the local police arrested a man. He was trying to approach the convention venue with an AK-47. The rifle had a full magazine, and the man carrying it was wearing a ski mask. He did not have a permit to carry the gun. The weapon was found hidden inside a large backpack. The man was trying to conceal it. But what was he doing with an AK-47, and that too near the Republican convention? We're waiting to hear from the investigators, but clearly the security threat still persists. And at this rate, it's becoming one of the most challenging presidential elections in America. Every day, new threats are coming to light. The Secret Service has stepped up security around Trump. Yesterday, he made another appearance at the convention, and this time, too, he was welcomed with loud cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the next President of the United States, President Donald J. Trump.
Yesterday, Trump secured his nomination. It was unanimous. Some of his fiercest critics are also coming around now. They're rallying behind the former president, like Nikki Haley. A few months ago, Nikki Haley was putting up a fight, challenging Donald Trump during the primaries. But yesterday, she offered her full-throated support to him.
I'll start by making one thing perfectly clear. Donald Trump has my strong endorsement, period. If we have 4 more years of Biden or a single day of Harris, our country will be badly worse off. For the sake of our nation, we have to go with Donald Trump.
Another endorsement came from Ron DeSantis. He too is a former rival. At one point, he was among the favorites to secure a presidential nomination from the Republican Party. Ron DeSantis ran an aggressive campaign against Donald Trump. He was called Trump Light. But his campaign tanked spectacularly, and now he has pledged his loyalties to Trump.
Let's send Joe Biden back to his basement, and let's send Donald Trump back to the White House. We need a commander-in-chief who can lead 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. America cannot afford 4 more years of a weekend at Bernie's presidency.
Trump is taking this convention by storm. So is the bandage on his ear. It has become a powerful metaphor, a campaigning tool even. Trump supporters are showing up with bandaged ears in a mark of solidarity. The internet is abuzz. Bandage memes are going viral. Take a look at this. There is a clear Trump wave, and the Republicans are trying to make the most of it. They're trying to woo young voters, and leading the charge here is Vivek Ramaswamy, another former presidential hopeful who challenged Trump in the primaries. He's now aggressively campaigning for Trump and his choice for Vice President, J.D. Vance. Yesterday, Ramaswamy made an outreach to the Gen Z voters.
And our message to Gen Z is this: you're going to be the generation that actually saves this country. You want to be a rebel? You want to be a hippie? You want to stick it to the man? Show up on your college campus and try calling yourself a conservative. If you're at home and you disagree with everything I just said, our message to you is this: we will still defend to the death your right to say it.
So that's the Republican Party, all charged up and firing as one. But what about the other side, the Democrats? Joe Biden resumed his campaign events yesterday. He'd paused them after the Trump shooting. Now the president is back in action. He made an appearance in Las Vegas, where he tried his best to match the energy of the other side, but couldn't. Biden did make a significant statement, though. He endorsed Kamala Harris. Listen to this.
Folks, it's because of you that I'm president and Kamala Harris is vice president. And by the way, she's not only a great vice president, she could be president of the United States.
Is Biden dropping a hint here? Will he make way for Kamala Harris? Is she going to replace him? Unlikely at this point. Biden still wants to carry on. He's not willing to step aside, even when some Democrats are trying to block his nomination. The Democratic convention is scheduled for the 19th of August, so about a month to go. And Biden is steadily losing support. There are loud whispers of a rebellion, especially among the Democrats elected to the U.S. Congress. They want to delay Biden's planned nomination, so the Democratic convention could turn into a showdown, and that would lead to more political turmoil, the very prospect of which is making Americans nervous. Look at the findings of a new poll. 4 out of 5 Americans fear that their country is sliding into chaos. They fear more political violence in the days ahead. And you can't say the fears are unfounded. They're living through dangerous times in a democracy in decline.
Take a look at what happened.
So American democracy is in chaos and decline. The country is demanding answers. Why did Trump not have enough protection? Was this a major security lapse? What was the Secret Service doing? And amid all of this, a new report has emerged. It says the Secret Service boosted Trump's security just weeks before the shooting. Why? Because of an Iranian assassination plot. This beats Hollywood. Let me explain. A few weeks ago, the US is said to have received new intelligence. Officials learned that Iran was planning to kill Trump. They got the tip from a human source. There was increased chatter on the back channels. All of it talked about assassinating Trump. So the Secret Service was notified and Trump's campaign was warned. Soon his security was also beefed up. There were extra counter-assault agents, counter-snipers, drones, even robotic dogs, all part of Trump's new security arrangement. Yet, after all of this, a gunman managed to take a shot at him. So was he part of Iran's plan? Well, it's highly unlikely. The shooter was a 20-year-old man. His name was Thomas Crooks. He was a registered Republican. Reports say that he was bullied during childhood. He was known to be lonely, but nothing suggests a link to Tehran. So the assassination attempt was unrelated. But it makes you wonder, if Trump's security was truly increased, how did they still mess up? Crooks was a lone gunman. He was on a roof with a rifle, located just 450 feet from Trump. How did the Secret Service not know? More importantly, witnesses suggest that they warned the police. They pointed at the armed man. They raised the alarm, but apparently there was an 86-second delay in the response, and that's when the shots were fired. So it was a major lapse. The Secret Service could not stop one man, even with the claims of increased security. Sounds hard to believe, right? And we're not saying that it's not possible, but it's sounding a lot like a lame excuse, and Iran agrees. It calls the report unsubstantiated. Tehran says the allegations are quote-unquote malicious, which brings us to the threat itself. In 2020, the year 2020, Qasem Soleimani was killed by a US airstrike in Baghdad. Qasem Soleimani was an Iranian military general, one of the country's most powerful and celebrated men. The killing led to shockwaves across Iran. Tehran vowed revenge. Now that strike, the one that killed Soleimani, was ordered by Donald Trump. He was the US president then. And since then, he's become enemy number one for Iran. Trump and his officials are constantly on the radar. In 2022, there was an assassination plot against John Bolton. He was Trump's national security advisor. Bolton still has his Secret Service detail. Mike Pompeo, too, was the target of an Iranian plot. He was Trump's Secretary of State. Pompeo, too, has a US government security detail now. So the Iran threat is not new. It's been around for some time, and Washington has known about it. So was this latest threat, what was it that the US is claiming now? Is it genuine, or is it an attempt to deflect attention? Just blame an enemy state and the headlines will gloss over glaring security lapses in America. It's a tactic that Washington has accused other countries of employing. Every time a country mentions a foreign conspiracy or a plot, the US is usually the first to lecture. But now they seem to be doing the very same thing. We don't know if the threat is real, but we do know that the Secret Service messed up here. If they had a tip-off on Iran, they should have been better prepared, not outmaneuvered by a Thomas Crooks. Now let's turn to the UK. British Parliament opened for a new session today with a new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. His Labour Party won the elections on July 4th, ousting their rivals, the Conservative Party, or the Tories as they're called. The Tories had been in charge for 14 years, but starting today they will be occupying the opposition benches. While Starmer celebrates his first day in the sun, a dark cloud seems to be gathering over the opposition benches. The Conservative Party is gearing up for a fight, not against Starmer, but among themselves. It will be the battle to decide on Sunak's successor. Sunak said sayonara to the Prime Ministership on July 5th, but he remains the Tory leader.
Following this result, I will step down as party leader, not immediately, but once the formal arrangements for selecting my successor are in place. It is important that after 14 years in government, the Conservative Party rebuilds, but also that it takes up its crucial role in opposition professionally and effectively.
So Sunak will wait for a successor to emerge before he gives up the party leadership. And some names have been doing the rounds recently, like Kemi Badenoch, Sunak's business secretary. She's considered a front-runner for the party's leadership. Then there's Tom Tugendhat, Sunak's security minister. He's also a front-runner, but today reports emerged of another candidate, a former Home Secretary, a British Indian who's planning to throw her hat in the ring. Now that exact description could actually be applied to two people. But we'll start with the newest contender, Preeti Patel. Patel is 52 years old. She was born in London to parents who emigrated there from the African nation of Uganda. Patel's family originated in the Indian state of Gujarat, but her grandparents had settled in Uganda's capital, Kampala. Her parents eventually moved to London, where she was born. Preeti Patel joined the Conservative Party in 1991 and she won her first election in 2010. She has been an MP ever since, going on to serve as the Secretary of State for International Development under Theresa May, and then she served as Home Secretary under Boris Johnson. It's an impressive resume, but she has stayed away from the cabinet for the last 2 years. Preeti Patel was seen as close to Boris Johnson, so the Prime Ministers after him kept her away. But it seems she's ready for a comeback now. She has apparently been putting together a team, gathering donors, canvassing for support, and Patel is expected to announce her bid any day now. So that's one more candidate for Tory leadership. One of two who fit my earlier description of a British Indian former Home Secretary. The other person is arguably more famous than Preeti Patel. It's former Home Secretary Suella Braverman. Braverman made waves while she was Sunak's Home Secretary, mostly for her tough stance on illegal migration and her obsession with the now scrapped Rwanda policy. Suella Braverman had even gone to Rwanda to check the infrastructure being built to house migrants. But then she was given the boot before a single migrant was. And now it seems that Braverman is back. This time she's eyeing the Conservative Party leadership and she's not afraid to tackle her opponents head on. Last week she took a shot at Kemi Badenoch, one of the current frontrunners. Badenoch apparently said that Braverman had a nervous breakdown. So Braverman called her out on this. Then she took aim at Rishi Sunak. She accused him of taking the Conservative Party to disaster. And she did not stop there. She decided to attack her own party next, saying that the Tories, and I'm quoting, the Tories shamefully did not build enough prisons. Yes, Braverman is coming out all guns blazing. But this does have an unfortunate side effect. It tends to alienate party members, which is not a good strategy because it is the party that selects the next leaders, the sitting MPs like Badenoch and Sunak and all their supporters. So Suella Braverman's chances are considered low right now. Despite this, she is still seen as a contender, one of 6. And 2 of the 6 contenders are of Indian origin, poised to replace Rishi Sunak, Britain's first Indian origin Prime Minister. Whatever you think of Patel and Braverman, whatever you think of their policies and their politics, the fact remains that 2 Indian origin women are vying for a top job, the job of leading the UK's most successful political party. It's a mark of how far Indians have come and their growing clout around the world. Moving on to Paris, it is hosting the Olympics in 10 days from now. Over 1 million people will descend upon the city, but is Paris prepared for this? Hosting the Games is proving to be a security nightmare, especially for France, which is no stranger to terror attacks. So they're taking security very seriously. They've rejected over 3,500 job applications for the Games because of suspected terror links and threats to national security. Other countries, including India, are also helping France. They're sending units to boost security. Our next report brings you the details.
It's a first in 100 years. On Wednesday, Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo waited for the perfect moment. She donned goggles and a wetsuit. And under the bright Parisian sun, she inched down a ladder into the murky waters of the Seine. Hidalgo began a front crawl before immersing her face into the waters. The swim lasted only a short while, but the point was proven. Swimming in the Seine has been banned since 1923. It's due to health risks. So, ahead of the Olympics, Paris embarked on an ambitious mission. A mission to clean up the Seine. Until very recently, the river failed quality tests. But Hidalgo's swim has inspired confidence. Some Parisians even joined her.
You go into the water. It seems natural and easy. The water is really, really good. A bit cold, but not too much. And look at the joy around us. And on top of that, the sun is out. When we clean up the Seine, yes, this will allow for Olympic events. Yes, this will allow us to swim in it after the Olympics and will be a major legacy.
So, Olympic events can take place in the river. But poop-filled river waters aren't the only problem for Paris. It has a bigger threat looming. It's the security for the Games. Take the Seine, for example. It's a river that snakes through the city. If the Olympic event takes place there, security forces will have to secure the whole of the river. That's a security nightmare. There will be ballistic glass lining the river walls. Military will have to patrol both sides of the Seine. Now, France is no stranger to terror attacks. There was the Charlie Hebdo shooting, the Bataclan massacre, the deadly Bastille Day attack. So the threat looms large always. And since the ISIS attack in Moscow, Paris is even more worried. It's scrutinizing every single security measure. Thousands have applied for jobs at the Games. Paris has rejected over 3,000 of those applications. France says they posed a risk to the country's national security. 130 of them have been designated Fiche S. This is the government's watch list for terror suspects. Security too has been beefed up. Paris will have a security force of around 45,000 officials. This will include military forces, police officers, and private security agents. The total cost of the security arrangement will be around 5 billion euros. Besides that, Paris is deploying all sorts of technology. There are surveillance cameras, anti-drone systems, crowd control measures. All of this will be used to beef up the security apparatus. France is getting help from other countries in securing the Games. India too has sent its elite dog squad K9 units to the country. So Paris seems equipped to handle possible security threats. But officials believe the biggest danger could be lone wolf attacks. The Olympics begin on July 26th. It continues till August 11th. Nearly 1 million people will descend upon the city. That includes athletes, trainers, journalists, volunteers, and private security guards. Which means France will have to step up its vigilance. Paris says it's thwarting terror attacks every day. But right now, it remains confident that it can prevent the Olympics from turning into a terror nightmare.
Meanwhile, in Brussels, the divide within the European Union is widening. Earlier this month, the bloc made a bold move. It slapped tariffs on Chinese EVs, electric vehicles. The decision virtually brought Brussels to the brink of a trade war with Beijing. But it seems the EU's pressure campaign is about to fall apart. Disagreements have emerged within the bloc. Not everyone is on board with a plan. Earlier this week, EU members held a meeting. There was a secret vote about the tariff plan. It's called an advisory ballot, meaning it's an indicative vote, sort of like a drip test. The vote is not legally binding, but it reveals where members stand on the issue. And where do they stand on the tariff plan? 12 European Union members voted in favor of it, 4 members were against it, and 11 abstained. Now, we don't know how each and every EU member voted. Remember, this was a secret ballot, but some details have leaked. Apparently, some key member countries abstained, like Germany, Finland, and Sweden. And their support is going to be important for the plan to succeed. If they don't change their position, the tariff plan could derail. And what is the plan? Brussels wants to charge up to 37% tax on electric vehicles imported from China. They want to raise the tax to 37%, but for the moment, these tariffs are provisional. Any such decision needs to be ratified by EU members through a majority vote. Now, there are 27 countries in the European Union. 27 countries are members of the bloc. At least 15 of them need to vote in favor for a proposal to be ratified. As of today, Brussels is short of 3 votes. They have time till November to reverse this, and China senses an opportunity here. It is building pressure on Brussels. Beijing has threatened to slap restrictions on European imports, and they're targeting 3 products primarily: pork, luxury cars, and premium cognacs. Beijing says Europe is dumping these goods in the Chinese market.
The facts should be objective and mutually recognized by both parties, rather than unilaterally determined. It is hoped that the European side will make decisions based on facts and rules which are reasonable and objective.
So there was a clear tug of war on trade. Now, China is retaliating against EU tariffs. In such a scenario, Brussels needs to put up a united front. But the bloc seems increasingly divided, especially on the foreign policy front. So tariffs is one issue. This week, there was another. This week, they snubbed Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary. Budapest is about to host a foreign policy summit. Hungary is currently the president. They hold the rotating presidency of the European Union, so they want to shape the bloc's foreign policy agenda. But other EU members are not on board, and they have decided to boycott this summit in Hungary. They plan to hold an event of their own.
To mark our disapproval with the Prime Minister Orban's uncoordinated trip to third countries on the issue in particular of the war in Ukraine, which have indeed harmed the indispensable image of unity of the European Union. And to mark this agreement, this symbolic gesture has been taken.
They're angry about Orban's recent foreign trips. He visited Ukraine, Russia and China and met with Zelensky, Putin and Xi Jinping. Orban called this visit a peace mission. But it wasn't sanctioned by Brussels. None of the EU member countries were consulted about the so-called peace mission. And now Viktor Orban is facing a boycott, but he seems undeterred. The Hungarian leader is increasingly projecting himself as a leader for Europe, and he's taking this campaign quite seriously. He's been putting out Hollywood-style promotional videos.
Washingtonból jelentkezem, itt folytatjuk a békemissziót, most ért véget a találkozóm. Elnök urat arra kértem, hogy támogasson bennünket a békemissziónkban. Most ért véget a találkozóm Xi Jinping elnök úrral. A háborúban a végső szót persze a háborúzó felek mondják ki, de döntő befolyása van 3 világhatalomnak. Dialógus és diplomáciai csatornák nélkül nem tudjuk elérni a békét. Mert a béke nem magától lesz, hanem meg kell teremteni, azért dolgozni kell. Azt akartam megtudni, hogy merre van a békéhez vezető legrövidebb út.
The videos are impressive, but they only highlight the deep divisions in Europe, the disunion in the European Union. Let's turn to India now, specifically the job market in the country. It's hard to describe it in words, so let me show you a video instead. It was shot near the Mumbai airport on Tuesday. Take a look. Sums up the current situation. Air India had listed around 2,200 job vacancies, mostly related to maintenance and loading work. And how much does it pay? Between 22 to 30,000 rupees. But look at the turnout. More than 25,000 job seekers gathered at Air India's office. It almost led to a stampede. And this is not an isolated situation. Last week, another video emerged from Gujarat. Hundreds of people were seen at a private company's recruitment drive. Take a look. Same problem, hundreds of job seekers but just 10 vacancies. Such pictures often mean just one thing: unemployment is rising. Let's look at the numbers first. Around 30% graduates in India cannot find a job. It's among the highest rates globally, 30%. And what about overall unemployment? It was around 7% in May 2024, but in June it jumped to 9.2%. So these numbers suggest that there is a job crisis in India. But the government has pushed back. It claims to have created 125 million jobs in the last 10 years. RBI data shows the job market grew by 6% last year. And don't forget the GDP growth. India's economy grew by more than 8% in the last financial year, which raises two questions. One, why is the job market distressed despite this growth? And two, how can it be addressed? Let's look at the first question first. India's growth is driven by capital-intensive industries. What does that mean? It means industries that need money or machines to flourish, not necessarily more workers. Just consider a shoe factory with, say, 100 workers. The owner buys a new machine that speeds up production. Maybe the factory was making 500 shoes before, now they're making 1,000. So growth has doubled without adding new jobs. That's what's happening in India. The growth is not translating into that many jobs, which brings us to the second question. How do we address this? Many experts point to the China model, creating a labor-intensive manufacturing sector. Think of it as a chain reaction. More investments, more factories, more jobs, more output. Let's focus on the first step though, more investment. Where will it come from? Foreign direct investment or FDI dropped 43% last year. India ranked 8th on the FDI list in 2022, but last year we dropped to the 15th place. Foreign companies took out $44 billion from India in 2023. Compare that to 2019, they took out about $18 billion. Now we come to private investments. How much are Indian companies investing in India's economy? Not much. Private investment has consistently fallen since 2011. The government did try to reverse it. They cut corporate taxes in 2019, yet private investment has not picked up. So the first priority is addressing this. If you want more investments, you must implement reforms. Whether it's ease of doing business or labor reforms or land reforms, if not, you cannot create more jobs. The second priority is small and medium enterprises, what we call MSMEs. They are the backbone of India's job market. MSMEs make up 62% of India's jobs. But recently, they have been in decline. Around 25,000 MSMEs shut down in the last 3 years. So the government must focus on reviving them. Maybe through cheaper loans or more state subsidies or maybe greater tax cuts. A third priority is education. The job market is being overhauled by new technology. Fresh jobs will be created. So the goal should be to be ready for that, for the new kinds of jobs. Unfortunately, our system is not adapting fast enough. How else do you explain a placement crisis at the IITs? If India's elite colleges cannot adapt, what hope do others have? Which brings us to the fourth priority, focusing on jobs for women. India's female labor force participation is 32%. 32%. In Vietnam, it's 75%. In China, it's 71%. Clearly, there are social reasons for this gap. So India must focus on educating and skilling its women. If not, the job crisis will remain half addressed. Of course, these are just a handful of suggestions. We are talking about a very complicated issue here. It won't be solved with one policy. It will require a nationwide, calibrated campaign. But with a population of 1.4 billion, India doesn't really have a choice. If the government does not hurry, the demographic dividend could become a demographic bomb. Now let's turn our attention to Africa. Some reports have been doing the rounds, reports about the state of foreign direct investment in Africa. One country seems particularly pleased, and that's Egypt. The Egyptian government is celebrating. They say that their country is Africa's foremost investment destination for the second year in a row. And they're citing a United Nations report while making this claim. Technically, Cairo is not wrong. Egypt has done well over the last 2 years. Several policies have worked in their favor, but there's also a bigger picture here about the overall investment scenario in Africa. Here's our report.
There's a saying in economics. A skilled statistician can get raw data to sing any tune they want. They just need to fiddle around with the numbers. The Egyptian government seems to have taken this saying to heart. They've been quite pleased with themselves because of a new report from a United Nations body called UN Trade and Development. This is a press release by the Egyptian government. They cited the recent UN report and said that Egypt is Africa's premier investment destination for the second year in a row. Now, technically, this is correct. In 2023, Egypt brought in more than $9.8 billion in foreign direct investment. That was more than 18.6% of all the FDI that flowed into Africa. So far, so good. But then, Cairo got a little ahead of itself. They said that Egypt's FDI inflows have increased from $9 billion in 2019 to $9.8 billion in 2023. The Egyptian government didn't lie, but the choice of years is certainly interesting, because it skips past 2020, 2021 and 2022. Here are the numbers for those years. It was $5.8 billion in 2020, $5.2 billion in 2021, and $11.4 billion in 2022. So for 2 years after 2019, investments in Egypt fell, and the FDI in 2022 was higher than that in 2023. With this context in mind, it seems odd that the Egyptian government was patting itself on the back, especially since even the 2022 figure wasn't a record. That was set in the year 2007, when Egypt received more than $11.5 billion in foreign direct investments. It has mostly been downhill since then, but Cairo has been working to improve things in recent years. 3 initiatives by the government were highlighted by the UN report. The first was the introduction of a single approval system for investment projects. All the licenses and permits that Egypt needs to approve an investment can now be found in one place. This scheme improved the ease of doing business in Egypt. The second policy that was lauded was Egypt's tax incentive scheme, especially the fiscal incentives to promote green hydrogen. And the third Egyptian policy that won plaudits was its new investment promotion measure. Cairo created a Supreme Council for Investments. It's chaired by the country's president, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. This gives Sisi a lot of say in development projects, but it does ease the path to getting investments. These are the reasons why Egypt did reasonably well last year and remained the #1 investment destination in Africa. But overall, the continent has fared poorly. Africa received only $52.6 billion in FDI inflows last year, down from $54.4 billion in 2022, and a whopping $82.1 billion in 2021. 2021 was a good year for the continent. There were record investments in South Africa, Mozambique, Nigeria, and Ethiopia. The investments were spread throughout the continent, helping develop more nations. But that trend seems to be reversing now, which might work well for Egypt, but the African continent as a whole is left poorer for it.
$10 billion. That's how many emojis are shared daily the world over. Which is not surprising. Ever since phone calls received a death sentence from Gen Z, texting is everywhere. And by proxy, so are emojis. They punctuate our texts and emails. They make bland texts exciting. They veil subtle expressions, and sarcastic introverts everywhere are thankful for it. But emojis are like the rogue protagonist in our texting life. They're equal parts helpful and chaotic. 92% of internet users share emojis daily, but how many of them actually understand the emojis? How many are using them right? Today is World Emoji Day, an annual opportunity to reflect on these questions. Fun fact, it is a completely made-up day. Much like the meaning of many emojis, completely made up. Let me tell you why. The first emoji was created in Japan in the late 1990s. It was primitive internet speak. We have come a long way since. Now there are climate change appropriate melting faces, multiple kinds of dogs, and this creepy moon. We don't mean to emoji dump on you, as the Gen Z would say, but there are about 4,000 emojis, and yet they are vague and open to interpretation. Last year, a Canadian farmer received a contract via text. He sent a thumbs-up emoji in response. The farmer says he was only acknowledging the message, but the sender thought that he'd accepted the contract. One thing led to another, and the farmer was dragged to court. He was hit with a $61,000 fine. You know what the world needs right now? An emoji-style guide. Because navigating emojis is like playing a high-intensity, multi-level game. First, you have to overcome generational differences. Do you use this emoji? If yes, you may well be wearing skinny jeans, side-parting your hair, and telling people which Hogwarts house you're in. Because there is a good chance that you're a millennial. Gen Z has long boycotted this emoji. Instead, they use this, a skull, which is the visual version of the slang, I am dead. This somehow signifies something very funny. But if you're a millennial, your fight is not just with Gen Z, but also with boomers, meaning people in their 60s and 70s. Look at this emoji, a bland smile on a yellow background. For most boomers, this is just a friendly smile. For most millennials, it is a tool of passive aggression. They use it to congratulate someone at work who just presented the world's most boring PowerPoint. And as for Gen Z, well, let's not even get there. The emoji may as well wield a knife because it looks psychotic. And the game is not over yet. On level 2, you battle cultural and geographical differences. For instance, thumbs up is a sign of approval in the West and most Asian countries. But in Greece and West Asia, it is considered offensive. Similarly, the angel emoji may denote innocence. But in China, it's a sign of death. That's one cute and happy Satan. The third level is gender, and this is a war zone. Female internet users have monkey emoji trauma, while male users think that women use too many emojis, which is not technically wrong. Studies say that women do use more emojis than men. But take from that what you will, because one study proves that people who use more emojis are more empathetic. So emojis may be pervasive, but in essence, they're not universal. They're merely a linguistic tool. They complement our language. You'll have to try and keep up with them and evolve as they do, or you can just let it be and accept your fate. Kind of like David Cameron in 2012. Back then, he was the UK Prime Minister, and he ended his official text messages with LOL, which means laugh out loud. Only he thought it meant lots of love. So you can use the laughing, crying emoji, but that's also the club you'll be joining. Our last story tonight comes from Japan, where 14 children have been admitted to hospital after eating potato chips. Do you know why? Because the chips contained the potent bhoot jolakya, or ghost pepper. The chips were super spicy, and they've triggered a debate. How hot is too hot? What's behind our fascination with spicy food? And what are the spiciest chilies in the world? Here's a report.
Yesterday, a young Japanese boy took a packet of potato chips to school. He shared it with a class of 30-odd students. As they say, sharing is caring, at least in most cases. But this scenario was not one of those. What followed was this. Students began complaining of nausea and acute pain in their mouth. 14 of them were admitted to hospital. What was wrong with the chips? Well, they were super spicy. The chips are correctly called R18 plus curry chips. They contain the potent ghost pepper. That's the nickname of the spice. Its real name is Bhut Jolokia. It's cultivated in northeastern India. In some parts of India, the spice is well loved. It's used in recipes regularly, but it is among the world's hottest chilies, so it's not for everyone. And the chip maker Isoyama Corp knows this. It has already issued warnings on its packaging and website. It quote-unquote forbids those under 18 from consuming the chips. Those with weak stomachs are absolutely prohibited as well. Others are advised to eat with caution, and preferably not when they are alone. Clearly, the message didn't reach the students. But the incident has quickly made headlines globally. It has drawn an apology from the company, a tasteful tweet from billionaire Elon Musk, and of course, it has fueled a new trend. People are trying the spicy chips, wincing in pain, and comparing the experience to suffering from urinary stones. That was both painful and amusing to watch. But throughout history, many cultures have been spice-loving. Some like it hot, and some like it hotter still. But how hot is too hot? Peppers are rated on what's called the Scoville Heat Unit Scale. Think of it as a mop your brow scale. It measures the components of chili peppers, especially capsaicin. This is a chemical that gives humans a burning sensation. Here's a fun fact. Spicy is not actually a flavor, it's a sensation caused by the pain on your tongue, and the culprit is capsaicin. The pepper scale measures this component and then ranks spices based on the heat. And who comes on top? A spice with a name as dangerous sounding as its personality, Pepper X. This pepper has a Guinness World Record for being the hottest chili. It has only been tried by 5 people on Earth, and they were almost immediately incapacitated. They writhed in pain. They lost their power of speech. Some reported getting cramps. It's practically an extreme sport. But Pepper X is not alone. The second hottest is the Carolina Reaper, followed by several others: Scotch bonnets, bird's eye, ghost peppers, and serranos. They all seem to have gang names. Well, maybe the bravado demands it. While there are risks, there are some positives as well. From Nigeria's famous egusi soup to chicken chettinad in India, chili has brought the heat in the most delicious way. Then there are chili chips, cold drinks, candies and sauces that have made the chili market worth $1.6 billion globally. Super hot chilies have spawned fun as well, from competitive chili eating to daredevil TikTok challenges. So if you're ready to feel the heat, try them at your own risk.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Torrential rains inundate Canada's largest city, Toronto, drowning roads and cars. UK's King Charles sets out the legislative agenda for the new Labour government as anti-monarchy protesters slam his speech. And Disneyland Paris sets a new Guinness World Record with its Bastille Day celebrations. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1936, the Spanish Civil War broke out. The uprising was led by nationalist rebels under the leadership of General Francisco Franco. It was against the Republican government of Spain. The war continued until 1939 when the nationalists won. Leaving you on that note, thank you for watching. We will see you tomorrow.
My government will govern in service to the country. My government's legislative programme will be mission-led